1938 was beautiful in China. The Christians at the inn were gathered for a prayer service. A strange droning noise began in the air. They all ran out to wave to the big silver bird. Airplanes. Bombs began to fall on Yangchang. When the bombing was over, the town was ruined. Gladys was knocked unconscious and lay in dirt and rocks. When she woke, she slowly pulled herself up. As soon as she could think clearly again, Gladys ran everywhere with her little first aid bag, a few bandages, and a bottle of iodine. Hundreds of people were dead or dying. With shock, she thought, the children are living in a war zone. Dear God, help them escape. Soon Gladys had 100 children, war orphans, living in the ruins of the inn. When she saw the Japanese planes coming, she blew a whistle, and the children ran and hid in caves in the nearby mountain. We cooked and ate weeds, Gladys wrote to her mother in England, yet I am happier here than I have ever been in my entire life. She heard of Madame Chiang Kai-shek, who had turned many of the Buddhist temples in another part of China into orphanages. Gladys thought it over but decided not to leave. That night, an officer from the army urged her to flee. Christians don't run away, she replied. Firmly, he handed her a poster which was posted all over the city. Wanted, dead or alive, the woman Aylward, which is Gladys. Reward of $500. Oh, Lord, tell me what to do, Gladys prayed. She opened her Bible and read Jeremiah 49:30. Flee, get you off. Get you far off, dwell deep. That was her answer. She must leave for the children's sake. God knew the future and always did what was best for her. 100 children, ages 3 to 16, must be led over mountains, thousands of feet high, across the wide Yellow River and into Shenzai province. Yangchang had become a battleground. There wasn't a moment to lose. Off they started, singing, "Count Your Blessings." They were a little band of young Christians who had very few blessings to count. Each child had a piece of blanket, a scrap of towel, a bowl, and chopsticks. The teenage boys carried food supplies. For the first 2 days, it was like a picnic. The children laughed and skipped and talked happily of their new home over the river. By the third day, Gladys found they had eaten all the food. The children were tired and began to cry and complain. Feet were cut and bleeding. In the morning, they all licked dew from rocks for a drink. Gladys carried the 2 youngest children. Come along, cheer up. There's another little village ahead, and perhaps they can spare some millet. The villagers always gave to others, even though they had a small supply of food. As Gladys and the children climbed higher, they left the villages behind. Now, 7 days from Yangchang, they were half starved, and there was no village in sight. Gladys prayed desperately that night, Lord, here we are. What are you going to do? I know you will help us soon, she thought. Once, I had 2.5 pennies in my hand, but now I don't even have that much. Next morning, the children shouted, Soldiers! Gladys froze in fear. Around a bend came 50 men, but they were friendly soldiers. They opened their knapsacks and handed out sweet treats and nourishing food. The children ate until their tummies were filled. After many days, which seemed like a nightmare, Gladys and the children arrived on the banks of the Yellow River. Now, in the book I read, there's a lot more details. Where are the ferry boats? Gladys wondered. The soldiers had promised them boats. One of the older girls, Salon, said, You told us Moses took the children of Israel through the Red Sea after God opened the waters for them. Why doesn't God open the Yellow River? Gladys was exhausted and discouraged. I am not Moses, but God is still God, Salon said.
That's true.
We will pray about it, said Gladys, and they did. She could hardly believe her eyes in the early morning when she saw a small boat with 2 soldiers crossing the river. I saw you through my binoculars, said the officer. In 3 trips, we can take all of you across to safety. Salon smiled happily. Their rescue was a miracle, just as the one that took the people through the Red Sea. Aylward was not Moses, But God was still God.
Amen.
They had been on the road for so long, but the walled city of Cheyenne was still miles away. No boats allowed on the Yellow River, said a policeman, Mianchu, the next little village they stayed in. Then Gladys was arrested. The Mandarin, though, was very understanding, and Gladys was not punished. Every morning, a refugee train leaves for Cheyenne, he told her. No tickets are required if you are refugees. In the morning, Gladys washed the smaller children in a pond and told them about the train. Stand on the platform and you will see the wonderful train God is sending for you. She gave some imitations of a train because they had never seen one before. They lined up in rows, but when they saw the big black monster approach with hissing and screeching, they all screamed, "A dragon! A dragon! Run! Run!" Gladys finally collected all 100 boys and girls, and for 4 days they rattled on in the train towards Zion. Now, if I remember correctly, if this is the right story, I'm believing they were like sitting on top of the train and everywhere. I mean, they were packed on there. By this time, Gladys was very sick. She could only murmur tiny prayers for help. The 2.5 pennies were far from her thoughts, but the same God who started her on this journey would not desert her, for she had given him all that she had. At Tian Sha, the tracks had been blown up. They were put off the train. Again, a mountain loomed ahead of her. They climbed over rocks for hours. The children hung on to Gladys and all wept, including Gladys. 2 more days, she groaned. Dear God, I have no strength left to give, no courage. I have a fever and can hardly think. I shall drop in my tracks. Please help. After 4 days, they reached the next village and saw a train track. No trains. The village women said. 2 men from a courtyard motioned her aside. We have a camouflage coal train waiting to start at midnight. We could help lift the sleeping children on and lay them among the bags of coal. Maybe this is where they were on the top. This time, it was not a fearful dragon train. The men and 6 of the older boys carried the sleeping children to the train, and off they rode, not one child waking. All night they traveled in peace and got off at a small town where soup was given to refugees. After a rest and medicine for Gladys, they boarded another train and at last reached Cheyenne. From there, a train took them to an orphanage in Fufang. As time passed, good homes were found for the children in a safer part of China, and Gladys was admitted to a mission hospital for treatment. After 17 years in China, Gladys Aylward returned to England. She traveled to the USA and 6 other countries to tell people that China needed to hear about Jesus and all he had done for them. Gladys also witnessed to Chinese people wherever she traveled. She never stopped giving all that she had.
Amen.